has suggested that there has to be an amnesty for the people who have been involved, the shadow government, and especially the hardliners, the cabal, as I call them in my book, because they've broken just about every law in the book, and it would be hard to get them to come clean, which some of them, I'm told, want to do or are ready to do if under the correct circumstances. It would be hard for them to come clean and start talking about things that might wind them up in jail for a considerable length of time.
They're in too deep now, Paul, aren't they?
Yeah, and so I think the amnesty, and George got this idea from the extraterrestrials themselves, at least Jim Sparks did, I should say, and allowed me to use it in my book. So I think that is an essential part of the whole thing, that Congress would have to repeal the law that has to be repealed, or pass a new law that gave general amnesty to all the people who have been involved in these things over the years, so that they can come forward and say what I'm sure a lot of them want to say, because quite a few of the retired people are now talking. We're getting more whistleblowers all the time, as you know.
Absolutely.
And the number of people who are coming forward is now so great that the researchers are having trouble coping with all of them.
You just mentioned the shadow government, Paul. Are you convinced that there are governments above governments, governments that we don't vote for, governments that are controlling presidents or prime ministers or leaders of other nations?
Well, there's no doubt about how the system works, and Nathan Lapham, the editor of Harper's Magazine, said there were two governments. There's the provisional government and the permanent government. And the permanent government are the Fortune 500 companies, the high-priced lawyers that do their legal work for them, and the high-priced public relations people, if you want to give them the most polite name, that do their public relations for them, and then the top civil servants, both military and civil, and that they really run the country, and that every once in a while you have a charade called an election, and you elect people who are supposed to be in charge, but it's very difficult for them to fight against the entrenched power of the permanent government, because it's there. Presidents come and go, prime ministers come and go, ministers of defense or secretaries of defense come and go, but they're there, and they just keep on keeping on, as it were. And so it's a toughie, but the Congress, and I think especially, has got to exert its authority, and I have suggested in my book that even if they have to threaten to cut off funds to get people to act, that they should do that, and it has to be a serious threat, of course, and follow up with some sort of a commission of inquiry with the counsel that are necessary for the kinds of interrogations that they would have to engage in to pry the truth out and find out just what these people are up to, because some of it sounds pretty far out.
If we have this technology, Paul, and we got it from the ETs, whether it was from a crash at Roswell or some agreement, why, in your opinion, aren't they telling it and sharing it with us? Is it because they want to make money and they know? And, regardless of our thoughts, I'm a believer in the abiotic oil theory that the planet has an abundance. It doesn't matter. It's still burning. It's still polluting. And, it's still doing what it's doing. But why don't they get rid of this if they have that kind of technology? Is it all about money?
That would be the primary reason, I would think. As you know, it's hard to know who controls this technology. And some of the interesting literature written over the years and substantiated over the years is that President Eisenhower lost control of the ET file, and that it was seconded more or less by private industry. And so nobody knows exactly who's in charge. And the MJ-12, as it were, that President Truman established, there are rumors that now has grown to MJ-36, and that some of the members are European. Well, who are they, and why are they? And why are they in on decision-making decisions, processes that are not available to elected members of the U.S. Congress? And these are just, I mean, the number of questions to ask and the amount of information that is being withheld is just astronomical, and which is the best reason I can think of to get on with it right away.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the controversial aspects of the book, of the message and light at the end of the tunnel. There are a couple. One, of course, and I want you to elaborate on it, Paul, is the Americans, of course, that we've been working with aliens from other planets for a very long time, back engineering their technology. You would think that they would get to a point, those who are giving it to us, and say, start using it. But give me your thoughts on all that.
Well, I think they are using it for military purposes, some of it. And this is one of the concerns. But I don't think that they have the final say. Jim Sparks was told that there had been agreements for disclosure and that these treaties had been broken, as so many other treaties have been broken. And again, it's conjecture until we have process established to get at the truth. What was promised by whom to whom, and why was the treaty broken? Why did we default on our promise to have disclosure years ago? And I think I think the extraterrestrials are totally frustrated with us because they know that we've got this wonderful planet and that God gave us to enjoy, and we're mucking it up. And they don't like what we're doing with it, but presumably they have some rules about direct interference, and all they can do is suggest or cooperate to the extent that we're willing to be amenable and to cooperate. And I think we're the problems.
You had mentioned that the banks are a lot of the problem, the way the financing system is built right now. Tell me about that.
Well, do we have enough time in this segment, or do you want to take that in another one? Because
no, we've got about 7 minutes now, and then we'll lead into a next hour, too.
Okay, well, most people don't know where money comes from. When I wrote my first book on the monetary system, I asked about 100 people, including doctors, lawyers, dentists, engineers, and newspaper publishers and newspaper editors-in-chief where money came from. And there wasn't one of them that knew. Not one. And yet these are the people who are running the world.
I would say it comes out of thin air, basically, from the banks that make it and create it. Yeah,
this is you've got the essence. What they said was that the government prints it. And I said, well, if the government printed between 50 and 100% of the money, which is what they all said it did, then we'd have a very different system from the one we've got now. But in fact, over a couple of centuries, the banks have managed to wheedle, by one means or another, a virtual monopoly in the creation of money. And the way they do it is if you go in for a loan to, say, $35,000 to buy a car, and you have collateral of some kind, as soon as they're satisfied with the collateral, they'll ask you to sign a note for $35,000 plus prime rate of interest plus a bit, depending on the color of your eyes. And then they tap their computer, and presto, $35,000 appears in your account that you can go out and spend to buy the car. And that seconds earlier, that money did not exist. The problem is that it's created as debt, and it's debt that has to be repaid with interest.
Right.
And so now we have a worldwide system where more than 95% of the new money created every year is created as debt. but nobody, and debt on which interest has to be paid, but nobody creates any money with which to repay the interest, with which to pay the interest. So
that's paid back with debt money too, right?
That's paid back with debt money.
Yeah.
So you have a system that's like a balloon, and it just keeps getting blown up with more and more debt until the debt load gets too high, and then it's like a balloon with a pin stuck in it, and the system collapses. And that's what, of course, has happened 25 times since 1890, and the economists and others haven't figured out a solution yet. Well, the solution is really fairly simple. The federal governments worldwide own the patents to create money. They own it on behalf of the people. It was handed down from the sovereigns, and the sovereignty is what they have to exercise. They have given it away to licensed privately owned banks.
I call them the money changers, Paul.
Exactly, yeah. And so they have to take back some of this sovereignty and create some of the money on behalf of the people who own the patent. And if they did that, then they wouldn't have to borrow. The stupid thing, really silly thing, is that the governments who own the patent license these people to create money. Then if the governments run short, instead of creating a little bit for themselves to make up their deficit, which they have the right to do, that they go and borrow from the banks that they licensed, who create the money out of thin air to lend to them, and the governments have to pay the money back with interest, which means they have to raise taxes or cut back on programs, which they're doing all over the world now, and they just, it's a form of slavery, George. And I have said that the present kind of world war is a war between the people of the world and the bankers of the world, and so far the bankers are winning. And unless we take control of that issue and do something about it, and do it very soon, millions of people are unemployed, millions of people are losing their houses. All these people all over the world are going to live in misery when they, in fact, don't have to, while the bankers are taking home these huge bonuses and living the life of Riley.
We'll talk more about this, Paul, and the ET presence when we come back on Coast to Coast AM.